Joe talks about Joe. And now, your host, Joe Slepsky.
Hello again, everybody. Welcome back to Joe on Joe Illustrated. It's me, your host, Joe Slepsky. And again, this is the podcast where we watch every episode of G.I. Joe and we go through every issue of G.I. Joe, page by page, panel by panel, cover to cover. We give it the love that it deserves. I'm very excited this week because primarily we're back to G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero from Larry Hama. And this week is G.I. Joe number 68. The Dead Game only has one more issue to go, so probably another 4 months till we get that issue, and we don't have to deal with it until then. So thank you all for putting up with it last week and helping me work through it, helping me help you work through it to help us all get through the Dead Game. So I'm excited. G.I. Joe 68. It is a very cool issue. It's like an action movie, and I really, really like it. Before we start, though, we're going to hear a word from our beloved sponsor, Movies and a Meal podcast. Listeners, I know what you need in your life. You need more podcasts. And you also love movies. So why not do a podcast that's about not one movie. It's about not two movies. It's about 3 movies and a meal. I'm talking the Movies and a Meal podcast. This show is great. It's brought to you by Keith, Brad, and Ben, and each week they bring a new movie to the table, which they all discuss as a group. And it's not, your highfalutin movies. It's What We Do in the Shadows, The Fantastic Four, Rise of the Silver Surfer, and Out of Sight. It's Bad Education, Ghost Rider, and A View to a Kill. It's X-Men Last Stand, Queen Sugar, The Mandalorian, and Major League 2. They are a lot of fun to listen to. You guys know Ben. It's our friend Ben Penseriga. He was a guest on Joe and Joe. In fact, Ben was the very first remote guest that I ever had on this podcast, so he's always got a special place in my heart. I'm really digging this. I just started listening to it last week. It is a lot of fun. They bring a guest in. The guest, I listened to their Heathers episode. They were joined by Kelly, and she went in depth on her favorite movie, which was Heathers, and it made me want to go watch Heathers to watch with them. I really dig it. So guys, find them out there at Movies and a Meal, Twitter, Instagram. Their website is moviesandameal.podbean.com. They put out 1 episode a week. Give them a listen, guys. Support them. Let them know Joe on Joe sent you. I don't think you're going to be disappointed. It is quite entertaining. And now back to the show. And while you're on the internet, subscribing to the Movies and a Meal podcast, make sure you follow me at Joe on Joe Pod. That's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or send me an email to joeandjoepod@gmail.com. And let me know what you think of the show. Let me know what you think about G.I. Joe. Let me know if you want to be a guest on the show. We are going to be getting back to having some guests, guest hosts, we'll say, for some of the cartoons. We're just working through some Real American Hero stuff right now. And what's exciting about right now is one thing I want to talk about real quick before we go any further is a lot of things in the air, guys. A lot of things are happening this week. And there's one really, really cool, really, really important thing that I want to make sure I mention at the very top of the show. Now, it's not super G.I. Joe related, but it is Joe on Joe related. It is, if you love Joe on Joe, and if you've listened to almost every episode of Joe on Joe, I mentioned my lovely and talented, beautiful wife, Rebecca. Longtime listeners, you know her as her code name, Toilet Teal. She's the Cobra cleaning lady. She's a hoot and a holler, and she actually hasn't, I realized she hasn't actually been a guest on the show, I think since pandemic started. And one of the reasons why is she has been very, very busy in her real life, helping to organize a very cool new thing. They launched today being Tuesday, February 16th. And what they launched is a labor union. So Rebecca has been a teacher at the Second City, teaching comedy, sketch, writing, teaching directing, things like that at Second City for a long time. She's been doing it online for over 10 years. I think she's been at Second City for like 12. And it's a wonderful community of teachers and improvers and writers and actors and performers and musicians and just talented, lovely people. But the one thing they never had is they never had a labor union. They never had something to speak up for their rights as teachers and as employees to make it a more inclusive, a better place to work at. So one of the things that they've been working on for this whole last year is just that. And I am so proud of her. She's part of the core group of people that we're organizing, and proud of all of them, really. But I've been able to watch her do it this year and really work very hard and very diligently and go through a lot of ups and downs and a lot of headaches and a lot of heartaches and a lot of wins and some losses and some frustrations and some happy days and all that stuff. So today is a really, really, really big day. So reason I'm sharing it with you guys on this G.I. Joe podcast is because you guys are on the internet. You guys have voices. You guys like to share stuff. Go check out my Twitter handle. We've been sharing stuff all day from it. But do me a favor and follow the ACE Union. It's AICE Union, and that is the Second City Instructor Union. Hashtag AICE Union, and they need your support. They need to get the word out. They need to get they just need to get a lot of support so that now that they've gone public with it, as they go into negotiations with the Second City, they can have the public on their side. They can show this groundswell of support for them. ACE stands for the Association of International Comedy Educators, and they currently represent the faculty of the Second City Training Center, and they represent Toronto, Chicago, and Los Angeles. So this has been an 8 or 10 month journey of coordinating teachers from literally across countries and cultural differences and needs, and it's been a wonderful experience to watch Rebecca go through this, or Toilet Teal go through this, and I'm very proud of her and I'm very happy for her, and I hope that you guys will follow ACE. That's at AICE Union. Tell them Toilet Teal sent you. There's an apostrophe in there or something. Yo, Joe. And just give them a follow, guys. That's all we're asking for. Give them a follow. Give them some support so that you can see their tweets as the negotiations proceed and continue. It's just the start of their conversation with their employer, and certainly not the end of it. But I'm excited. I'm excited for her. I'm excited for them. And a lot of the teachers are close personal friends of ours. We're part of the Second City family. Beck's taught there for a long time, and she lives and breathes it. And so to see this success for a lot of these people that we know very personal level, it means a lot. So we appreciate it. So that is that. So go make sure you follow ACE Union, AICE Union on Twitter. They're on Instagram with that. I believe they launched a Facebook page with it, but I know on Twitter we were launching them today too. So I'm very excited. Now we're going to get into G.I. Joe number 68 with our very special segment.
You were saying?
Where we look at what comic books were on the rack, in this case, February of 1988, because that's the cover date of the comic. It's not necessarily when it was on the shelf, but we'll get past that. So we're going to start with Marvel this week. Marvel this week is Amazing Spider-Man 297. This is the last issue before McFarlane. This is the 298. 298 is the first cameo of what's his face? Venom. What's his face? Only one of the most popular Spider bad guys of all time. So we're on the verge of getting a Todd McFarlane. Daredevil 251. It's got a very we just blew up the building cover. John Romita Jr. and that dude's name. I think that dude's name is Bullet. And they're standing in the wreckage of basically Hell's Kitchen that they just destroyed. So that's no good for anybody. Let's see here. This is distracting. A lot of these cover images aren't showing up because the links are broken. But here we go. We also had this month, we had G.I. Joe Yearbook number 4. We had Special Missions number 9. I am going to circle back and get those down for our Patreon. So be on the lookout for those. I promise you. As I just finished saying, our house has been busy with stuff. This is by far the biggest, speaking of Todd McFarlane, this is by far the biggest comic book of the month. Incredible Hulk number 340. Todd McFarlane and draws Wolverine, and in Wolverine's claws is reflected the Gray Hulk. You guys know this cover. It has been, swiped. It's so popular. It's not really swiped. It's just homaged at that point. It's funny when a piece of art is subtly awesome, but no one notices it, it's stolen when someone else does it. But when it's mega popular and everyone knows it, then it's just an homage. But it is a great cover. Incredible Hulk 340. It's funny. This is the comic book that I don't know if I discovered McFarlane from this, but it might have been. But it was my first issue of the Hulk that I ever bought because I liked Wolverine. This would have been a couple of years from now. So I hadn't yet really gotten into, I was just about to get into my X-Men stuff and learn who Wolverine was and all that stuff. But once I did get into comics, very quickly, this cover was such an eye-opener. And it was so, you got to get this book. I think I paid $10 for this comic book in what would have been probably 1990. And I remember that was a big deal. Now it's a $50 book or something like that, if not a little more. But I remember where I bought it. I remember being excited about it. I remember excited that they had it. It was this little used bookstore that had a comic book section, which I don't know how there's got to still be used bookstores out there, but that was always my secret. That was my collecting secret for you listeners at home. Used bookstores that carried comic books were always the best place to find the best stuff. I remember there was one used bookstore by me on the south side of Chicago. They had a complete run of Miracle Man that I was able to get. This is back when getting Miracle Man was long out of print and it was impossible to get these books, and I didn't even understand what it was, but I just knew it was very popular. And they had a full run of Miracle Man. This used bookstore was near like a Jewel or Dominic's or something, and we would go there grocery shopping after church most Sundays. So when I'd always be like, all right, I'll go to church. Are we going grocery shopping later? Like I would be fine with going to church as long as I trusted that we were then going to go grocery shopping after church. And if so, then I'd be like, awesome. I can't wait to go to church, because when we went grocery shopping, I would just go to the comic book shop. But it had to be, there was the other rub though. It had to be the late church, because if it was the early church, they had like two services. They had like an 8 and a 10 or something like that. If it was the early church, by the time we got out, the comic shop, the bookstore wasn't open yet. So it had to only be the late church. If we went to the early church, I was furious, because that meant the used bookstore would not be opening, or it would only open at the very tail end of the groceries. So then I would be in the grocery store trying to drag out the trip. My mom would be like, we just needed a couple things. We need to go home. And I'm like, no, can't we wait? It opens in 15 minutes. That was my constant struggle. The years where this was happening, I definitely wasn't old enough to drive yet. I was probably 14. And so that was my struggle. But that shop is where I got my copy of Incredible Hulk 340, and it's a fabulous, fabulous book. What else we got here? Marvel Universe, there in the Book of the Dead official handbook. The New Mutants and X-Men and X-Factor, the Fall of Mutants is proceeding apace. Let's see. Oh, Strike Force Morturi is still continuing. Strike Force Morturi is a cool book. We've talked about this on the show before. We who are about to die salute you. They trade getting it was a book ahead of its time. They trade getting superpowers knowing that they have a shorter lifespan, and so they become superheroes and then they die and burn out. It's a pretty cool idea. Uncanny X-Men 226, X Factor 25. Yeah, a lot of good stuff on the racks, but by far that Hulk 340, that's the winner. And next on,
You were saying?
DC Comics, February of 88. Let's see. Oh, here it is. Here's that last issue of Booster Gold. Booster Gold 25. The classic pose Booster, like striking a strut on the cover. Man, I am rereading now. I've started the second volume of the JLI, the Justice League International stuff, the Giffen DeMatteis McGuire stuff, which, let's scroll down a little bit here, is, Yeah, they were on like issue 10 at this point. So I'm reading the second omnibus. So it's around like issue 38 for the Justice League, and they're about to do that Despero story, which is fabulous. But I just love it so much. That era of Justice League is so good, and I've really never read it sequentially like that omnibus puts it. Where it was an issue of JLI, and then an issue of Justice League Europe, and then an issue of Justice League International, and and I've never read it that way, or Justice League America, I should say. And reading it that way, it's a different experience, and it's a bigger soap opera. It's a bigger like comedy, really sitcom, really. But it's just so great. If you guys have never read that stuff, and that includes Booster and Beetle, they should do a big, and they probably will when they eventually do a Booster Gold Blue Beetle movie or TV show. They should just do a big ass omnibus that collects all the Blue Beetle and all the Booster Gold stuff. I don't know if DC has the rights to the Charlton stuff though. I seem to recall, and if there's anyone out there that knows something, tweet me out. I seem to recall DC soliciting a collection of, and now my brains can't remember if it was Blue Beetle or if it was Captain Atom, but I think it actually was Blue Beetle for the Charlton books. And listeners, if you don't know what that means, Blue Beetle, Captain Atom, there's a guy called Peacemaker that you're going to see a ton about in the new Suicide Squad movie. He's played by John Cena. The Question, and there were a couple other dudes involved in the mix. They were characters from a company called Charlton. And Charlton was purchased by DC in the very late 70s. And Steve Ditko worked on a lot of them. Like Ditko, helped redefine Blue Beetle. He, great Captain Atom. He created the Question, things like that. I think Dick Giordano was over at Charlton too. So when DC bought them, then they integrated them over in Crisis. So I swear I saw. I think I might have even pre-ordered it, where they were going to do a Charlton collection of the Blue Beetle stuff, and then it disappeared. So I don't know who has the rights to that, because you got to imagine that if DC had the rights to the Charlton material, when Suicide Squad comes out with John Cena playing Peacemaker, they would do a big ass reprint book of that. You'd be a fool not to do that. And I don't know that that's coming up. I haven't heard any rumblings about that. But Blue Beetle and Booster Gold, at the minimum, they should do a big omnibus that collects these two series. They're both about 25 issues. It'd be perfect for an omnibus. But they definitely should try to get that Charlton stuff in print, because I would love to read it. I've really not read a lot of it. But I've read everything with Blue Beetle from DC, literally everything with Blue Beetle from DC, at least from the early years. I don't think I've read his Birds of Prey stuff. Anyway, boom, Forever People, Volume 2, Number 1. So Kirby had left DC for a few years now, and they were trying to constantly revise his Fourth World stuff. I can't say it's great. Forever People, I think this is a limited series, and then New Gods had their own. New Gods had their own limited series or ongoing series, and it just wasn't great. I know Paris Cullins did a lot of the artwork. He might have even done the artwork on the Forever People stuff. I like his stuff. It's no comment on that. There was something about it that just didn't work, and maybe every book that was gonna come immediately after Kirby, the next version of a Kirby idea is always going to suffer this. I don't know. But that late 80s, early 90s DC revival of the Fourth World stuff never really worked. I think when John Byrne took it over in the late 90s, and then Simonson took it over, I mean, those two were top tier. That kind of revitalized it. There was a Mr. Miracle series around that time that was really, really great. And then in the early 2000s, they did a book called Tachyon, which was like a backdoor connection to the book. You didn't realize what it was when it started, but he was like the source wall come to life, if I recall. That book was really good. It was like, well, it only ran like 8 issues. Spoiler, little known fact, there's a handful of books from the early 2000s from DC that really only ran like less than a year that were not terrible. Tachyon's one of them. The Challenger of the Unknown, which I think ran like 18 or 19 issues, was really, really solid. So, but hey, we're talking about February of 88. And so we're also talking about Green Arrow number 1. This is the Mike Grell revamp after his Longbow Hunters miniseries. Guys, This series is great. I think it holds up a little stodgy in modern parlance, like just a little pedestrian, but I gotta be honest, it's really, really good. Like there's no moss growing on this tree. Green Arrow is fabulous. It's a really, really well put together run. It sits in the shadow of like Dark Knight Returns and that whole trying to seriousify your superheroes and stuff. And I know they've absolutely collected these in recent years. So get your hands on this Green Arrow volume, this Mike Grell stuff. I know it's digital as well. Take a look at it. It's really, 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 really good. We talked about Justice League International. They're in their middle of their Millennium crossover. We do have this month. It's the end of the Millennium. It's the final 4 issues of it. Thank God. I'm just kidding. Speaking of Peacemaker, he did have a 4-issue miniseries, and it was issue 2 is out this month. Star Trek, Superman. Oh, Batman guest starring in Suicide Squad. That's really great. Batman going up again. Anytime Bruce Wayne and Amanda Waller kind of go face to face, I always appreciate that. Teen Titans Spotlight. So let's talk about this for a quick second. Teen Titans Spotlight featuring Starfire, and she's crossed over with Harbinger. Harbinger for spinning out of the Crisis crossover. I'm just gonna brag on this. I'm so happy this week. I picked up the Crisis box set that came out sometime last year from DC, which is this enormous box with beautiful, beautiful George Perez art, all stolen, taken from the those promotional Crisis posters they put out a few years ago. And it's just this massive, heavy box, and it has hardcover collections of like all the major crossovers that led up to Crisis. It's got, of course, Crisis. It's got the Aftermath stuff. It's got the Crisis on like the JLA JSA crossovers. I forget what they were calling those. Crisis on, not Infinite Earths, but anyway, the softcover collections that they had done that collected all the JLA JSA crossovers over the years. They've collected those into hardcovers, which I already had softcovers, but I never had the 6th. Anyway, point being, I'm so happy with this purchase. I haven't dug into it yet. I'm waiting to get the perfect like reading chair for it, because I can't wait. If you love Crisis like I do, don't sleep on this. It's on Amazon. There was like 1 or 2 copies left when I bought it. But I got it for like 50% off, because they're not going to make any more of these. It's really high end, but if you love DC and Crisis, man, don't sleep on this. A lot of people weren't aware of it, I think, because of the high end nature of it. So, yeah, there's this massive Crisis box set out there that I absolutely love. All right, now on to what was in the movies.
You were saying?
February 1988. It starts on the 5th with, technically it started on the 1st, but on the 5th, it's she's having a baby, John Hughes movie with Kevin Bacon and Elizabeth McGovern. It's a charming movie. It totally holds up. I haven't seen it in quite a while, but it does its business. But let's just get all that aside. Let's really get to what we're talking about. We're talking about Action Jackson with Carl Weathers, Craig T. Nelson, Vanity, Sharon Stone, Bill Duke, Robert Davi. I mean, that's a murderer's row of 1980s right there. And How Do You Like Your Ribs? I love Carl Weathers. I love Action Jackson. And it came out on February 12th. Man, the next week, so let's see, look at this. Oh, that's weird. So what should have been February 19th, nothing came out. So I wonder if that's weird. I wonder why nothing came out on February 19th. But I'll tell you what, on February 26th, Bloodsport with Jean-Claude Van Damme and Frantic with Harrison Ford. Now, it's a Roman Polanski movie. He's a guy who's had his issues. Not a massive fan of him personally, but he directs the hell out of a movie. And if you've never seen Frantic, it's a remake. It's really good. Harrison Ford's great in it. What is it? His wife, I believe his wife gets killed, and then he gets framed for it, and he has to run around France and try to prove his innocence, I believe. Which sounds like the the Fugitive. Maybe it was a warm up for that, but for real, Frantic's really, really good. But it's a Roman Polanski movie. It's disappointing. Hairspray, though, John Waters. I love John Waters. Hairspray is a lot of fun, man. It's got Divine, Debbie Harry, Ricky Lake, a young Ricky Lake, Jerry Stiller, Rick Ocasek, Pia Zadora is in it, Sonny Bono. Hairspray is a whole lot of fun. And then this movie, man, I forgot about this movie. A Night in the Life of Jimmy Reardon, River Phoenix, Meredith Salinger, who is Patton Oswalt's wife. I forgot about that movie. What is happening in that movie? I don't remember, but yeah, I do remember it now. Ione Skye, Matthew Perry's in it. Okay. All right. That's a movie I'd revisit. So yeah, so February was kind of light, and for some reason they skipped the 19th. I wonder what was happening. February 19th, 1988. Maybe they were just afraid of, they had to give Carl Weathers some room for Action Jackson.
Now, mass is ready.
That's right, Destro. We're getting into G.I. Joe number 68, starting with the cover. The Persuader jumping off the back of a flying C-130. This cover is great. It's by Ron Wagner and Bob McLeod, and it's who's it? CoverGirl and Backstop, and the Persuader is behind him a Snowcat, and behind them an Ostriker. And what's awesome is they're just jumping out of the plane. They're not on parachutes. They are just jumping like 50 feet to the ground as the C-130 takes off. It's representative of what happens inside the book. You know that's a big plus in my book. We also get Cobra hiss tanks and Baroness squeaking her face into it. I dig it. I like this cover a lot. I think it's a lot of fun. I think we're working with some good angles here. If the placement of the hiss tanks, and especially it's helpful the way the hiss tanks are manufactured. They bring your eyes right to the Persuader. That's what we're focusing on, and that's the toy du jour. It certainly gets a lot of play in this issue. I dig it. I like it. I think, if you take any points away, it's the lack of background. I think I would have liked a mountain range in it, something in the back to kind of break it up. It might be too busy though, so that might be why you wouldn't do that. But I feel like a nice mountain range, maybe even, making it look like the C-130 has to clear the mountain. So you put the mountains a little higher than the C-130. That might have helped a little bit, but I like it. It's a fun cover. It certainly stands out, and I'm here for it.
Yo, Joe!
And here we are on this first page. It's almost as if it was ripped from the cover, which is also awesome. The story is called Cut and Freeze Dried. Script by Larry Hama, pencils Ron Wagner, inks by Randy Emberlin, coloring Bob Sharon, lettering Joe Rosen, editor Bob Harris, in-chief Tom DeFalco. It picks up we're back at the Frozen Land International Airport. So if you guys remember, last issue didn't end with the Joes promising major military action. That's one of the things I really like about this issue. There was no, you remember it ended with Storm Shadow being like, oh man, yeah, people are snakes, they lie a lot. So it was very much a Cobra wins, because remember they took over Frozen Land with the Terror Drome mental domination, and it was kind of not downer's not the right word. It's not coming to my brain, but it was low key. It was just a low key ending. It was like, yep, Cobra just 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Cobra just made a chess move, and that was it. There was no man, mount up, Joes. We're going to Frozen Land. This issue, I adore that it just starts with explosions. There's an airport. Things are on fire. There's a C-130. Baroness is doing the heavy, the narrative lifting for us. That's the G.I. Joe transport. We don't want them landing here and sticking their noses until all the contracts are signed. It just starts literally with a bang. It's great.
Yo, Joe!
The 130, it lands. We've got Slipstream and Wild Bill piloting it. And they're letting us know that they're sealing off the runways. There's it's nice use of panels on this page, because it's a sorry about that. That was Shirley Feeney getting a little sassafras for you on the podcast this week. But no, it's great. It's a great use of a page, because there's for an action scene and one that we just got thrown into, there's a lot going on. We got the plane landing, so we have to be introduced who's flying the plane, so who's making these decisions. They have to give us some information about why it's hot, why they're the trouble they're having with the runways and everything. Simply a real simple way to name check for us here, that you got Slipstream saying, I thought Hawk said this was going to be a milk run, so he was talking to Bill. Then we cut directly to Hawk, who's speaking to the cockpit there in the back, saying Cobra turned it sour on us, keep those engines revved up. So we get that great comic book introduction of name checking everybody, which you guys, longtime listeners, absolutely know I am not only just a fan of, but I'm a proponent of. I don't care what your comic book is. If it's a single issue comic book, you need to name check everybody. I don't care if it's issue 2 of 6. I don't care if it's issue 75 in the long running series. Every comic book could be somebody's new comic book. So when you introduce characters, you need to name check them. It's part of the language of comics. And as we get here, we get Backstop. Now, Backstop, I believe, showed up in a couple of issues earlier, but he's Backstop and the Persuader are by far like the heroes of this thing. So we get a couple quick inset shots. Now, the other thing that this page sets up that continues throughout the book is it's an action movie, and action movies have a lot of quick cuts, and they have a lot of boom, boom, boom. This is happening, that's happening. And you will see that pace continue throughout the rest of this issue. It's really, really cool if you're looking for it. And that's what's happening here. We got 6, we got 8 panels on this page. Thin, a bunch of thin ones. These middle ones really play like storyboards. They really play like storyboards if you were going to be storyboarding an action movie. And then at the bottom, which is about a 1/4 size width, takes up the whole panel. You get the Persuader blowing out of the back of the C-130, which is always very cool. Yo, Joe! And we see that CoverGirl, who probably hasn't been in the comic in a while, she's riding shotgun on the Persuader, and so she's saying that she's got a lot of targets to choose from. I love the smoke. It's a really great smoke that they're drawing. They've illustrated. Now this is a move, man. This is a move straight out of like either a Bond movie or a Fast and the Furious movie. But we are to believe that Wild Bill in this C-130, as they come to the end of the runway, they basically do like a skid, like hit the brakes and skid to a stop and reverse everything on this C-130, so that they're now facing the other direction, so they can take off in this plane. It's fun. What's crazy is like, nice move, Bill. 180 degree turn with no power loss. Even as a kid, I never understood what that meant. Like, okay, but you know what? If anyone can do it, Wild Bill can do it, and I'm here for it. And these big, broad panels, which are the next couple pages, this brings that epic scope to it, that epic action eye to the page. And because now it's the big things are happening, so they require big panels. Yo, Joe! And this line of Cobra hiss tanks, great. Lots of speed lines. I think it's, so there's a lot of like snow that's being kicked up, and I think that's important because there is a lot of like lack of definition in like we were talking about on the cover. Like, I would have liked to have seen a mountain. That kind of continues in backgrounds. It kind of continues throughout this book. More Shirley Feeney says. Sorry, guys. So yeah, it's great. So these are just shots from big epic war movies. got the row of his tanks. Then you got this great procession of the Persuader, an Ostriker, and a Snowcat. Gotta be honest. So I never had a Persuader when I was a kid. It never appealed to me. Even in the comic, it really never appealed to me just because it was so singularly focused in that. And I don't think the cannon could swivel on the toy. I believe the cannon was stock forward. And that always bothered me. I like it. I like how they use it as we're reading these books and stuff. But I loved the Ostriker, and I loved the Snowcat. Snowcat's top 5 vehicles for me. Snowcat is absolutely amazing. Everything about it was fantastic. So, like this image of those 3 in front of the C-130 is awesome. It's just really, really, really great. And we see here Iceberg. It's funny. Iceberg's in the Ostriker, and Hawk, Iceberg and Hawk are in the Ostriker. Duke and Frostbite are in the Snowcat, and then we got CoverGirl and Backstop in the Persuader, and then we cut back to the Cobras again, and we get to see their end of the action, and that's how you would do it if you were making a movie. And these really work like storyboards. Yo, Joe! And it's good to see CoverGirl in action. She's not fooling around. And I guess it does. Well, it definitely swivels in here. For some reason, did the toy swivel? I'm going to pause this and find out. Hold on. Okay, guys. So I just did a quick little Google search. Having never owned the Persuader, I don't think it's swiveled. It doesn't look like it's swiveled at all. I'm looking at used photos. I'm looking at the the file card stuff. I don't see anywhere on here that looks to me like it's swiveled, and that's what bothered me even as a kid. It just didn't feel right as a toy. It looks like, let's go back to the page here. That turret should totally swivel. And on the next page, if you look closely, you see that it absolutely does swivel. But I don't see any images of this toy having a swivel cannon, and it bothered me as a kid. It's bothering me today. So guys, let me know if you're hearing this, and just reach out to me and be like, yeah, you moron, of course it swiveled. And if it did swivel, you tell me, why is there 0 pictures of it on the internet showing that it swiveled? But this is as far as this comic book goes, this is a nice feature of the toy. They use this the fact that it's a laser cannon. They really focus on that, and it's very effective when it's used. So it's taking these HISS tanks out with one shot and everything. So they use the Persuader cannon to carve a hole through the wall of Cobras that were heading towards the plane. Yo, Joe! So like a battering ram, those 3 vehicles kind of cut through the Cobra front, and it gives Wild Bill and Slipstream the chance to enough runway for them to take off. So that's really cool. I like this shot, this middle shot of the plane flying past the camera. It's all very, very, very cinematic. Then you get a close up of Hawk, kind of regrouping the Joes, telling them, to regroup. And it's also telling us what's happening, regroup. So that part of the mission is over. They've successfully got their buddies off in the air. And now the next part is they themselves need to not get killed. Yo, Joe! Now here we are at the Frusenhagen Harbor. And we're back to Prime Minister Wolf, who, if you remember last time, he was the newly installed PM who got suckered into buying all of the Cobra stuff because the terror drones started causing this. They're calling it the Reindeer Hunters Revolt, which is awesome. It's just a small little detail that I think should not be overlooked. Is fabulous. We also see all the members of Cobra wearing the earmuffs. Even these Techno Vipers are wearing earmuffs over their helmets. So, and I'm sure that's for our sake. I'm sure that there would be an earmuff built into their helmet, but that's for us to make sure that we know all the Cobra people need to wear these special earmuffs to stop the frequencies. And Wolf in over his head, Mindbender is, completely snow jobbing them, so to speak. And that's when Baroness calls to say that they have fired on the interventionist agents of the G.I. Joe team, which really offends Wolf because they were here. He says they were sending a special team to ensure the safety of their testing and research station. So now it's saying, well, the Joes had a testing and research station, which we knew from the previous issue, but that the Joes used that station as cover to why they would be showing up here now uninvited, because they technically, America wasn't invited.
Yo, Joe!
And on the coast, we see some Terradrome spitting out the radio waves, and it's Fred 7 dressed up as Cobra Commander. Now, this Techno Viper, he seems real suspicious, and I like him. I don't know. I hope we revisit with him because he's really asking all the right questions. Saying like sir, you were the one who brought the plans from the Eskimo. What was that Eskimo's name again? Like, he's playing the part of, I'm going to get you, Cobra Commander. And he's only rescued by the action where Cobra Commander's like, oh, we got to go. We got to scramble the Mamba. So he jumps into the fray. He inadvertently makes himself look more heroic only because he's consistently fleeing conversations that the real Cobra Commander would have, which is awesome. This second panel of them walking through the hallway, very Death Star feel to it. And the detail on it is fabulous. Kudos to the art team for this image. They've put the time into these Cobra soldiers to make them look like the toys, guys. This is what I was talking to somebody at the comic shop saying, man, I was like, Ron Wagner's stuff is the perfect G.I. He is my favorite G.I. Joe penciler. His stuff absolutely captures the look of the action figures, absolutely without a doubt.
Yo, Joe!
So now the Mambas take off. And as they do, we see that Cobra Terradrome is under surveillance by a couple of Joes. And it's Blaster and Blocker. And we know that they're from the Battle Force 2000, which they get properly introduced, spoiler alert, a little later in the issue. I think Blaster, was is my guy Matt Plossman's buddy. He loved him some Battle Force 2000. Battle Force 2000, one of the things that turned me off G.I. Joe when I was getting to be that age. I don't know why. I think I like them now. I did not like them then. But Battle Force 2000 is that special operations group that the new Joes were sent to check up on. Meanwhile, it was an excuse just to get some firepower on the shore so they could see what's going on with Cobra. So we also see here very subtly that the Blaster is always listening to his Walkman, right? His headphones. So he's basically wearing the same kind of sound dampening earmuffs that the Cobra is wearing, so without realizing it. And just a very quick nod that the Blocker is very cranky today. And Blocker's like, you ain't seen cranky. I'm not cranky. And they're driving, I don't know what vehicle this is. Hold on. Looks to me like they're driving around in the Eliminator from the Battle Force 2000. Which is a cool thing that they do later. That's very toyetic and very much like I can imagine when Larry wrote it, he was like, okay, I guess I have to do this. We'll get to that.
Yo, Joe!
So now we get to the Arctic Research Station where Battle Force was working on their equipment. Very reminiscent of John Carpenter's The Thing here. And as the Eliminator pulls up to this Arctic station, and there's also other vehicles under tarp there's a fabulous picture of Dodger and Avalanche in a fight, throwing, hitting each other and blasting out the front door of this research station. I don't know why that picture is great. It's a great drawing. It's got a lot of power, a lot of energy. You don't expect it. You don't expect to see two Joes going at it. We do because we know the Cobra is putting out these signals, but not what you would expect pulling up to an Arctic station. And what this is a great way to get action into a scene that normally wouldn't, because why would the Joes, Joes have no reason to be fighting each other. This is a great way to just start it with, they're already at it. They're already at each other's throat. So now Blocker jumps out and he starts getting in the fight. So they're all just, let's go at it. And Blaster, who still has his headphones on, and they make sure to draw it in this final panel, he's like, what is happening? And here comes the Vector, which Maverick is driving.
Yo, Joe!
And he's able to kind of stop Maverick from taking off his helmet, because Blaster realizes something with the sound. He's not being affected because he can't hear it. Tells Maverick to stop it, and they come out with a boombox and with like really loud noise, and that kind of gets all the dudes to calm down a little bit. So they kind of realize something's going on. All the Cobras they were surveilling at the Terrordrome, they were all wearing headphones, and you see in these bottom panels that the guys all relax a little bit. They go from beating each other up to kind of being like, what were we doing? So that's cool. So now we're still getting kind of introduced to them. We still don't know exactly what these all are, and now we know that they like to punch each other.
Yo, Joe!
Meanwhile, out in the tundra, the race continues. And what's really awesome about this is Larry took the through line of the sound waves driving people crazy. Previously, it wasn't affecting this group of Joes because they had just gotten off the plane, right? He applied it he showed us how it stops with Cobra. Then he showed us how it can be counteracted with Battle Force 2000, but also how it applies to Battle Force 2000 and the Joe team. And then now we just go straight here, and right away, first line of dialogue, get those vehicles in line, you morons. They're all yelling at each other, so we get it. We get what's happening here. So it's what's going on. It's the application of it, the resolution of it, and now we have to get that solution off to the wider populace. So he's essentially giving us what we need to do in this issue by just showing us what's happening. Really smart, really subtle. I like it a lot. We see here in this third panel, it's very subtle. There's a the ACV, all crawler vehicle, is strapped to the back of the Snowcat. The Joes are still arguing with each other, and for some reason, Cobra Commander knows that they're disoriented, and I guess he says it's because they're heading out onto the ice shelf. I don't necessarily know that he would know that that's because they're disoriented, but if they just wanted to go that way. But he thinks it's because they're out of their mind. And it's probably true.
Yo, Joe!
So, Baroness is still trying to chase him, and they got the Wolf vehicle, which is a great Cobra vehicle. That's a lot of fun. She's getting information from the sky from Cobra Commander and the Mamba. He's kind of telling them where it's at. But he gets knocked out of the sky with Heat Seeker from the Joe Battlecat that stopped. Now, when the Battlecat pulls away, this is really cool. We see that the vehicle's gone off the back of the Snowcat, and not only is it just gone, they took the time to draw like loose buckles, like where the vehicle would have been strapped into. So again, very subtle. Absolutely, probably missed it the first time we watched. First time I read through, but really, really quite cool.
Yo, Joe!
Cobra Commander crashed in the Mamba, but he gets picked up by Baroness, and he's in the armor, so he's fine. And now we get this whole thing's very much a spotlight, so a lot of name checks on the toys. So now we get to feature the maggots with the worms drivers driving the maggots, and we get to spotlight on that. So Baroness orders them to long range fire. And as they shoot, they're basically breaking the ice, so it's isolating the Joes. The Joes aren't going to be able to, circle back. They're going to sink them. They're driving on an ice shelf, right?
Yo, Joe!
Meanwhile, back in Frusenhagen, that Prime Minister Wolf guy, he's kind of had it up to here with Mindbender. And he's pretty cranky about them stealing his country. And interestingly enough, he's not seemingly affected by the earmuffs, or by the lack of earmuffs, which is weird. That's a weird thing. And I would think he's certainly not happy with them, and he is paranoid, but he's not crazed like apparently the rest of the country is. And that seems to be an oversight. I feel like they gave him headphones in the last issue, but he's not wearing them now. So like, why wouldn't he be just a lunatic? But it works. So we got Ice Vipers being featured here. Baroness leading them, talking about, of course, in pure Cobra fashion, someone says the right thing to do. And then someone in Cobra leadership, this time it's Baroness, usually it's Cobra Commander, says, that's ridiculous. The Ice Viper's like, we should split up. Because there's like one track that goes back. And the hubris of Cobra is that, don't be ridiculous. Our radar would have caught anything that was on the ice that would have slipped past us, because she says the radar can detect anything over 3 feet tall. And remember, what was the draw of that low lying all-terrain vehicle is that you're basically riding on your belly. It's like a light cycle for G.I. Joe. So that's kind of a tease as to what was happening there. But it's the hubris of Cobra that always spoils them.
Yo, Joe!
So now we get a nice overhead shot of what's happening with the Joes. The ice shelf is broken. The wolves are able to drive fast enough to kind of jump over the chasm in the ice. The remaining Mamba is coming in and really does a good job of taking out the Ostriker. I gotta say, I gotta question why the Joes would bring an Ostriker to a battle like this. Because not only is it just an open canopy, vehicle, it just seems like not armored enough for this kind of excursion. But I love me some Ostriker, so I'm here for it. But it does get chewed up and destroyed. And Hawk and who was driving Frostbite or Iceberg, sorry, they get knocked out, but they get picked up by the Snowcat, and in a cool moment. So Iceberg salvages light anti-tank weapon, like a little shoulder-mounted anti-tank weapon, which comes into play in a fun way.
Yo, Joe!
The very next page. So now the Persuaders, taking out anyone that it can. There's lots of good explosions. Again, really quick cuts and quick angles, but we can still kind of follow the action here. And this middle panel is really cool. You get a little exposition here saying, wait till I pass him, then hit him. In the rear, where the armor is the weakest, they're talking about this is a wolf that's driving past the Snowcat. They're going to hit them from the rear. But what they don't know is Hawk and Iceberg have left the Ostriker and are hanging out in the back with that Law rocket. And that's when Iceberg just hits that wolf right with it. And it's a great moment of, yeah, they don't have any armament, and then whoosh, boom, boom, they're destroyed. Might even have to get Iceberg a kill count on that one, because that guy did not live.
Yo, Joe!
So the Joes have certainly done well, but they are still heavily outnumbered. They're down to just the Snowcat and the Persuader, and at least 1, 2, 3. There's at least 7 wolves that Cobra is squaring off with. So it's basically Baroness is like, let's just stay back and start picking them off from a distance. And they all launch their missiles, and there's a great inset of her giving the fire call, and then just 24 missiles just in a barrage, all going to the Joes, who are about to meet their maker.
Yo, Joe!
When all of those missiles get shot out of the sky, like all of them, there's a rat-a-tat-tat, and it destroys everything. And I mean, these guys were going to die, and here we go, introduced to Battle Force 2000. And it's there they are, guys. It's the let's see, what's up front is the let's see, the Eliminator's in there for sure. The Sky Sweeper is there. The Vector is there. The Marauder is there. The Dominator. The Vindicator. And they are they're, I mean, it's Battle Force 2000. It's funny. It doesn't look that wildly different, but it was just different, because they weren't really trying to emulate normal military vehicles, like the Sky Sweeper, not Sky Sweeper, the Vindicator. Like, that doesn't look like any airplane I've ever seen. It's kind of a quasi hovercraft VTOL thing. The Vector could hang, that's got a little Conquest X-30 to it, and the other ones are just big blocky future things. It's kind of like any future sci-fi movie from the 70s, where they just envisioned everything being blocky and square. which is wild, even though what happens on the next page
Yo, Joe!
is a big reason I think why a lot of these vehicles look the way they do, is because they all combine to form the defensive fortress, the future fortress. And after the battle force kind of clears the way, there's a bunch of explosions. They say, sorry, we couldn't make it, sir, but we had to knock out all the terror drones first. So they apparently flew all over the country, destroying all the terror drones. And then he says, request permission to form vehicles into defensive fortress, sir. And Hawk gives him permission. And then we get this, which is a very toyetic moment. They just make this fortress. And it's so funny to call it a fortress. When you're a kid and you're playing with a toy and these 5 vehicles, Voltron together to make a bigger vehicle, I get it. You're like, it's a fortress. But then when you draw it on the page and it's drawn to scale and all the people are just standing there and it doesn't look anything like what would be considered a fortress, especially because they just took out these giant Terrordrome fortresses. It doesn't really play. Now, I think it's an accurate rendering. I think good job on the art team of rendering this to scale. But one of the things that Transformers have as an advantage over something like this is that they always said, in the comics at least, and in the cartoon, I believe, that they played with mass and size, right? So as they transformed, they would get bigger or smaller, depending on what they had to do. This, they don't do that with this. So this is just a small little square of weapons sitting in the middle of the snow that's about to get attacked by Cobra.
Yo, Joe!
Meanwhile, in Frusenhagen, here comes the ATV, and it's Duke, and he pulls up on this thing, and he's like, "Hey, Prime Minister Wolf, get over here. I'm Duke, first sergeant of the G.I. Joe team." Now we know that all of the Terrordromes have been destroyed, right? So now they're not spitting out that anger ray. So all the people are like, I just don't feel that angry anymore. And Duke shows up and he reveals their primary mission was to deliver a secret offer from the government, and to let you know why everybody's been so upset. So that's kind of cool. Duke's drawn very much like Hawk. Hawk and Duke are very similar in this issue. I think, that's something we've dealt with in the comic before. But with this coat on, Duke's very much got a Hawk feel to him.
Yo, Joe!
And we end up on the ice shelf. The Cobras and Joes are still fighting. The Battle Force team is fighting off the Cobra. They're behind the future fortress. And we get a call from Mindbender saying, call it off, Baroness. The United States just made a deal with the Prime Minister Wolf, and the secret of the Terrordromes is out. They've been given 24 hours to clear out of the country. And arg. And we end up with Hawk being like, shoo, foiled him again. Guys, this is an action movie just happening. I'm here for it. Now, what I don't love about this issue, I like a lot about this issue. There's a lot to like about this issue. But one thing I don't love is the seeming quick wrap up of the Terrordrome plotline. They still make a formidable base, but the idea of subversively sending anger waves and hate waves throughout all these countries seems like a bigger plan that now it's been exposed. I don't think, and again, I don't remember, maybe they do deal with it in a different way, but I feel like it just got wrapped up real quick, and that disappoints me. So I hope they bring it back. I know Terrordromes themselves make an appearance, and certainly there's, they're formidable and there's a lot of action there. But the subversiveness of them being the mind control stuff, I like that quite a bit. So I hope they revisit it. But either way, G.I. Joe 68, very cool. I'm here for it. I'm a big fan. I love Ron Wagner's art. I'm a big fan of you guys for listening. Thank you so much. I hope you appreciate it as much as I do appreciate you. And and remember, now you Joe, and Joeing is half the battle.